All right, everybody, we're going to get started. Maybe take a seat, grab one last drink or some food if you need it. All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming. I'm Jesse. I'm the product owner for Twill. I'm joined by George, our CEO, Quentin, our lead engineer. We've also got a bunch of other folks from Area 17, Twill's parent agency. If everybody could raise their hand, that'd be great. So excited to have people from all sorts of backgrounds, designers, developers, UX folks, to get into some of the background and the future of Twill. So George is going to kick it off by giving a talk on the landscape, what made us kind of create Twill, the background, and some of the forces that kind of drove us to create what we're really excited about is a potentially kind of revolutionary tool for design and development in the CMS space. And then Quentin is going to give a talk on Twill itself, give a demo, do some kind of coding to show you how to build something out. And then I'll give a talk on the roadmap and what's next and what's coming up in the future. We're also hiring, so if you're interested in talking to any of us about a role, check out the website, come around, any of the Area 17 people will be glad to talk you through what we're building and how you might be able to help.
Okay.
I'll pass it to George.
Cool. Okay. A little energy, you know? All right, thanks so much. I appreciate it. So to get started, in 2018, Area 17 released Twill, an open source CMS toolkit for Laravel. Twill was created for the explicit purpose to be able to bring content management into a space that's creative, that's productive and enjoyable for publishers and designers and developers. And since we released it, there was two questions that came up often. Why does the world need another content management system? Good question. And why open source? So that's what we're going to talk about today. And today I'm going to share with you our journey into the open source space and our motivation and what compelled us in order to release Twill. So Area 17 develops custom software for clients, and content management plays a significant role in the products that we create. And as an agency, we work with hundreds of clients, and many of them come to us with frustrations with their current CMSs. And the odd thing is that many of them actually accept the fact that they should be re-platforming every couple of years and accept that as normal. We belong to SODA, the Society of Digital Agencies, and I can tell you we're not alone. There's many of these agencies that we talk to, they're just experiencing the exact same things, and some of them see it as okay, you know, like they see it as a re-engagement strategy, you know, to be able to work and re-platform their clients every couple of years. Others are frustrated with it. And it's interesting because it's astonishing to think about all of the things that have happened in technology and on the internet over the years. Yet, after 25 years of the World Wide Web, we're still struggling with the fundamentals. So let's break that down. So a packaged CMS solution promises speed to market. But what the problem is that businesses are unique, not packaged. So you end up customizing it, and you're left together with a hacked Frankenstein code base that's difficult to optimize and difficult to make performance, secure, and sustainable. On the other hand, a custom CMS solution can be tailored to your client's needs and optimized fully. But the problem is when you build custom, you actually have to build all the admin features yourself, and that's costly. Further, users expect digital products to be intuitive, powerful, and flexible. The apps that we use today have seamless publishing experiences. And publishers are users too. And in order to be efficient and effective, they need those seamless publishing experiences also. Yet when it comes to content management systems, it seems like we've gone back to the year 1999. Why is that acceptable? But most importantly, content management killed the editor's job. In the past, back in the 90s and before, content editors and designers would sit together and lay out a story in the most compelling way possible, a collaboration between content and design. Yet a CMS made of ugly forms and strict templates creates a great distance between the designer of the template and the editor who uses it. This divide creates a vicious circle of designers creating stricter templates so that the editors don't break their designs, and then editors asking for custom pages so that they can have more creative freedom. In the end, we're left with experiences that are either boilerplate and boring or custom and expensive. So we have lack of developer control, bad publishing experiences, and no creative freedom. To address these problems, new questions needed to be formulated. How can we give developers the ability to rapidly create a feature-rich CMS without compromising control? And how can we give publishers the freedom to author and curate compelling narratives and give them command over fast-paced digital workflows? And how can we put design controls in place to ensure the integrity of the design system without restricting the creative needs of publishers? A big, fat, hairy challenge. One important enough that we wanted to solve it, but we didn't think we can solve it alone. The power of the masses was needed, and our journey to open source was about to begin. So this wasn't our first rodeo. We had incubated many products in the past for ourselves internally, but Twill had a somewhat evolutionary path to existence. While 2018 was the first time that Twill poked its head into the public sphere, it had been in use by Area 17 for nearly all client projects. It began as a boilerplate to give our engineers a starting point. Clients got a custom CMS with all the features that they'd expect from a packaged solution, and we were able to focus on the more interesting aspects of the project that made our clients unique. However, as our boilerplate converted into a package, there was unexpected consequences. In essence, we had created proprietary software which opened up certain legal questions. Some of our clients wanted to own 100% of the code base, and some clients felt that they'd be locked into working with us. And other clients felt that they needed to release their entire code base open source. This left us with a decision to make. Do we get into the business of selling proprietary software, or do we release it open source and stay focused on our core business? That's Hamlet. In 2017, we made the decision to release Twill as open source, to address the legal concerns, but more importantly, to transform it into a best-in-class CMS toolkit through public collaboration. By building a global community around Twill with a vested and collective interest, we can increase adoption and improve the solution faster and more effectively. In turn, Twill would be better quality because when software is free, the motivation behind decision-making is to make the best, most useful product possible. And with more eyes on the code, Twill would be more robust, tried, and tested. This includes better security because the community reviews. And further, everyone would get full visibility into the Twill codebase and all discussions around it. Transparency makes vetting the solution faster and building and maintaining it easier. However, we're quite sober about the risks involved. Open source is said to be free as in kittens, not free as in beer. It requires maintenance and ongoing support. All of our agency competitors would have access to it and can use it in their pursuit of competing against us. And just because we release Twill open source doesn't mean it will get adopted. Low adoption may actually harm our core business. But no matter the risks, the benefits were too compelling. And over the following year, we've invested 3,000 plus hours refactoring and redesigning it for public release. And with excitement, we released Twill on July 5th, 2018. But there was a nagging doubt. Are we insane? Will anyone care? Well, I'm happy to say that people do care. Since launch and with little marketing, Twill has been downloaded over 13,000 times. Agencies and developers around the world are adopting it as their CMS of choice. And large prominent organizations are validating our hypothesis and confirming one side of the value proposition. Twill makes content administration a creative, productive, and enjoyable experience. Meanwhile, our internal engineering team and the open source community are validating the other side and giving credence to the other side of the coin. It's easier, faster, and less constraining to develop premium products with Twill. So here we are. Twill was created to meet an internal need in an area of our work where our convictions run deep. But there's still a long way to go. And if we truly want to fix the broken state of the CMS, we can't do it alone. It's going to take a tribe. That's why we're here today. We're excited to get other people involved. And while Twill is a developer product, we're looking for venues to get other disciplines involved also. We hope that together we can move past the dark days of content management and make our lives and the lives of designers, developers, and publishers just a little bit better. Thank you.
Thank you, George. So that was just a little bit of context again on how we got here and what led us to create Twill. Quentin, our lead engineer, is going to take over and give you guys a demo of the product itself and show you guys how to build some things super quickly that we're excited about.
Hi everyone. So I might not be as eloquent as George. George is pretty used in doing presentations, but I'm going to do my best.
Great too, man.
Thank you. So we'll talk about what is Twill. George kind of started to introduce it, but getting in more depth. How does it work? Who uses it? And then we'll do some live coding. So what is Twill? First, in essence, we'll see after what is it in substance, but first, what is it with words, how to describe it. So it's definitely a CMS for the end user. We're going to work with a CMS, content management system. But it's not only a CMS, it's a CMS toolkit. It's a toolkit to build a fully custom CMS. It's a toolkit for Laravel, so you need to be a Laravel developer to use Twill, but we're looking into simplifying that, and we have actually seen people learning Laravel through Twill. And it's also open source, in case it wasn't clear. And the promise of Twill is really to be able to rapidly create a custom admin console that is both intuitive, powerful, and flexible. It relies on a couple of principles. First, being very simple and user-centered. No bloat in the UI. The user should be able to know where to edit content. It makes no assumptions on many aspects. It makes no assumptions in the front end. You can integrate any type of front end on top of Twill. It also makes no assumptions in terms of the content that you create. So in many CMSs, you will find kind of default content type, a post, a page, whatever. In Twill, that's totally up to you. It's also premium, even though open source. It's a product that people love to use, and it could be considered really a premium product. It's all about developer experience. It's first and foremost a developer product, so it's really making sure that the developer experience using Twill is great. It has 3 user groups, publisher, designers, and developers. So that's kind of what is Twill in essence, but now I want to look at it in more substance and maybe more UI. So like any other application, Twill is both front-end and back-end components, and together they make an application. A lot of front-end components are needed to kind of build fully custom CMSs. So from there, you see navigation, tables, forms, block editor. Those things are pretty much things you would find in any CMS. media library as well. We also have more custom features that we'll go through together. So it all starts with the navigation. Our navigation is on the top, and it's very flexible to fit any kind of content structure. So one thing we like to do, but it's not mandatory, is to match the navigation of the front end with the back end. So in the case of this website, Pentagram, the top sections, walk about and news, are the exact same section in the CMS navigation, so it's easier for the publisher to find its way around. It can go into many routes. We have 3 levels of navigations, and nothing is there at the beginning, just the media library, but for each project we use more or less levels of the navigation. Obviously, below the navigation, the first thing most publishers would use is tables. You need to be able to browse content, and so we have all sorts of features that to be able to filter through content, search content. So you can see I'm starting to search for something. That list is going to filter automatically below. I can then order content alphabetically or by date. I can also do bulk editing, so if you need to unpublish or delete, and those actions are completely customizable per project. For each item, obviously, you have those actions as well. There's a layer of personalization for each user. You can pick the number of items per page, pick which columns you want to display, and that stays per user in your browser. So that's for tables. They're fully customizable depending on the user need. We can have more or less columns. It's really fully customizable. So listing of content is great, but you need to edit that content. So we need forms like in any other CMS. So this is just going to scroll through one of our forms. It's just one out of dozens and actually maybe hundreds of forms that we created with Twill. And this is to power this. This is a case study on Pentagram. So there's a lot of different types of information, a lot of text, but also some more structured information like the partners that work on this, and then a collection of assets. So if I go through that same video again, you'll see that some of the information is structured, like the subtitle here, the short description, the case study text, where you have more like formatting capabilities. But again, this is fully custom to this page on Pentagram, but any other project will have a form that is very different than this. We have all sorts of fields, obviously from the most simple, just an input text, to a WYSIWYG, to media attachment, to date pickers and multi-selects, and this field that we call browser to be able to attach things from one side to another. If you have multiple content types, obviously you want to relate them together, so we have all sorts of fields to be able to do that. Form can be more or less complex, of course. This one was pretty complex, robust for a complex detail page, but some other pages are more simple. Like this is the partner page on Pentagram. They have a picture, a bio, and some news attached to them, publications, and videos. So the form is going to be much simpler. You're going to have first name, last name, role, the bio, image, video. You're starting to see some type of form fields like repeater content when you need to create multiple times the same thing on the same form. And again, the browser field to be able to relate the news that were displayed on the partner page. Form can be even simpler than that. This is the form to manage a feature on the homepage of the Art Institute of Chicago. It's an image, a type of feature. They can relate an exhibition, an artist, or an event, and that's it. That's just this page. It fits in one page. So forms are great, but it's a little bit boring. You need more visuals when you build the core, the body of the page. When you need flexible content, not just a title and a description, of course. We have a content editor for that is full screen, where you see the front end of the site that you're building at the same time. So depending on the project, you're going to create different blocks. The design system of Pentagram is pretty restricted. They have 4 types of components that they can put on their case studies. But of course, in larger projects, you would find a lot of different blocks. So here I'm creating a new block, searching for images in the media library, and then reordering those images, and I can see it live. Then I'm switching to preview because this was just the body of the page, but you want to see that in context and potentially play with responsive to see if that's going to work on mobile. And you can always switch back and forth between creating the content and actually see how it's going to look in the entire site. Once you have created all of this content, you need a way to kind of feature things. So for different reasons, sometimes it's going to be because you have like a big carousel on the home page and you need that to be manually curated. In some other instance, it might be depending on the region the user is coming from. So that was the case for this website for Sonia Riquelism, where they want to feature different articles depending on whether you're coming from Europe, Japan, and also depending on the language you're visiting the site in. And so for those kind of features, we have what we call buckets, and it's literally buckets where you put content in. So in this case, they have a featured bucket, and they can manage this bucket for the international region, which is kind of everywhere in the world, not the other region that you can see on the left, Europe, USA, and Japan. And they can feature different types of content for those different regions. The integration in the front end is not something that Twill is taking care of. You set up your CMS however you want, and the front end can dictate in which region of the world this is going to display content or not. And then so we kind of went through all of the screen except the dashboard, where kind of everything is coming together. You also need productivity in a CMS. So you need to know what happened in the past. You need to know how many items you have, and kind of have a quick access to creating things and see what you have in drafts, for example. We also have a little Google Analytics module to be able to see some stats without having to go to Google Analytics. So in this video, I'm starting from the dashboard. I'm first starting to take a look at my stats for this week. I'm pretty happy about that. And then I'm going into work. I have the intention to verify something that I've seen on the site. And so I'm going to search for this project. I noticed that this image has changed for some reason. And so I can use the revision feature where you can see when and who edited what. And you can preview that. You can also preview an older revision, and you see that the image has changed. And in the end, you can also compare the different revisions visually. So you can, and this is synchronized scrolling, so you can scroll the website and both are scrolling together. You can spot the difference between multiple versions. And of course, if you're happier with the previous version, you can restore it on the top right. So we talked about all of those components that make up the UI of Twill. Obviously, a lot of backend components are needed to kind of hook that in and make all of that work. So we won't go through all of them, but it's a partial list of the core components. So obviously, we need authorization and authentication. That's what I'm calling auth square here. And then CRUD, create, read, update, delete, kind of the basics of any CMS. And then additional features like upload, internalization, versioning, image rendering, block rendering, preview rendering, analytics search. So all of those are kind of hooked together, and as a developer, you can use them or not to put together your own CMS. So how does that work? Two main technologies. First, Laravel. So Laravel is an open source PHP framework. It's actually the most used PHP framework. And really the motto of pain is to take the pain out of development by using common tasks. So things like authentication, authorization, database access, all those basics features that you need to build web application nowadays are kind of included into Laravel. So Twill is really made with Laravel and for Laravel. And the front end is built with Vue. Vue is a framework for front-end applications, it's a big competitor to React if you haven't heard of Vue. And it's a progressive framework. You can adopt it progressively. It's really good. So technically, Twill is a package for Laravel. You install it in your Laravel app. So you're not downloading a zip like you would for WordPress and upload that on the server, and boom, you have your thing. You install that on a Laravel application. So whether it's existing or not, you can do that. Here I'm kind of outlining the process for starting from scratch. So you would create a Laravel app using the Laravel new CLI, and then you would require RS17 Twill to be installed in your app, and then you have a command to install it, and that's going to generate a bunch of files in your code base. And once it's installed, the idea is that it really provides a great developer experience for many reasons. The first is that, again, it's not making any assumptions, so you're going to be able to build any front end on top of it. If you're into classic server-side rendering, that's perfectly fine. If you're more into SPAs or even server-side rendering of SPA, that's all possible. There's no lock-in, so no lock-in as far as data, I would say. There's no kind of Twill database structure. It's all very easy to migrate from and to. There's no bloat, so there's no feature that the user is not going to understand. We never really had any feedback from clients saying, I don't know what's going to happen if I click here. That's not something we heard of, because it simply makes sense to them. It has no limits. We'll see after some use cases of Twill, and really it's a Laravel app in the end. So if you use Laravel package already, you can use those packages with Twill. That's perfectly fine. It's also cheap to run. Like any Laravel app, I mean, if you optimize it, you can definitely run it on cheap servers. But it also scales very well. We have sites with thousands, tens of thousands of records in the database, and it's perfectly fine. We never heard of a client saying the CMS is becoming slow. We don't have any kind of performance issue scaling to huge amount of content. And finally, it's also accessible and documented. So accessible, to link back to what I was saying earlier, we heard about front-end developers learning kind of Laravel and PHP development through Twill. So it's really trying to be accessible. We can improve that, and Jesse will talk about kind of the future of our roadmap and how we want to improve the accessibility of Twill. But it's already documented. There's a documentation that is public, and anyone can get started from there. So who uses it? I mean, we certainly do. We love it. We're biased, obviously. We created it, so. But really, we've been using Twill in one form or another for more than 10 years. What we described today is a Laravel package, but this is a UI from a custom CMS that Arno, the founder of RS17, created almost 10 years ago. And as you can see, there are some principles that are still there today. After that, it actually became some kind of bootstrap for CMS. If you're familiar with Twitter Bootstrap, this front-end collection of CSS and JavaScript component, that's what Twill was 5 years ago. We had this library of form component, and we were kind of creating the backend each time, but the front end was already a package thing. So with that, we created the Opera National Library. It was a huge CMS, and you can see the buckets feature was already there. The UI was not as fresh, but they managed their entire kind of magazine section through this feature. Then we rebuilt our own website with Twill, and it was kind of the birth of the Twill as a package. It was first more like a boilerplate, where we built the RS17 website in a more generic way than previous websites, and we were able to reuse that starting base to build multiple websites after that. So I'm mentioning a couple here, THG, which is a huge kind of e-commerce website for bathroom faucets. May 36, which is a museum gallery, so a lot of high-resolution images and things like that, and Roto, which is a museum. We also did the artist at risk connection website, which was more a functional website, not only about content, where people were able to submit content in the front end that was then available in the backend for publisher to review and publish on the site. And of course, Pentagram that we just took a look at. And we've reached a state, this was our old block editor. We reached a state with this boilerplate and kind of bootstrap for CMS package where you probably heard of jQuery spaghetti. There was starting to be a lot of jQuery plugins hooked together, and we needed to rework that. So that's when we fully migrated to Vue, and now our entire front end is Vue-based. And since then, we've built a lot of sites with Twill. So Riquilism is one I mentioned already earlier. Charvet is a French high-end brand. Translation is an agency, a marketing agency. Breast Cancer Foundation. TTP, which has an amazing logo made by Pentagram. It's a science, a technology company. They do amazing things in the UK. We did the site for Open Society Foundation, and we didn't do just one. We did Open Society Foundation, Open Society Justice Initiative, and we also maintained the design system for the Open Society Foundation in Twill. We did the Aspen Ideas Festival, huge database of content where they are able to reuse bits of content they create for the talks in curated pages, collection of talks, to avoid them having to duplicate quotes and things like that from the talks. They are able to reuse content that is created multiple times. We also did a simpler website like this one, which is just a one-pager about patriarchy and the planet for what's the do the green thing. But we did also a very complex website like the Arts Institute of Chicago, where Twill is really just a small part of the entire system. The Arts Institute of Chicago built what they call the data hub, and on the right it's all the services that they have internally, and Twill has been kind of hooked into everything, and data is coming in and out. And it's not just the website. It's really about serving apps. It's about serving the museum, like physical iPads in the museum, rendering 3D artworks and things like that. And all of that is kind of flowing and in and out of Twill. We also did a multi-tenant site with Twill. Salon des Entrepreneurs is a French kind of founder fair. And they have multiple of them in different cities in France. And so they needed the ability to kind of have the same site multiple times for those different editions. And so in the CMS, they can manage the exact same set of content and pages per site. So here I'm on Nantes, but I could be on Paris and edit the same thing. And they are able to publish content from one day to another. So for example, right now the Paris fair is done. So they have a page that is saying, thank you, see you next year, and things like that. But the Nantes and Marseille fair didn't happen yet, and so they have a page to actually announce. And they are able to already publish the page they will need when the festival is done. We also did some headless development with Twill. This is a product we built internally to enable our resourcing and casting team to identify the skills of our engineering team. And so this is a Vue front end where you have search in the front end with transitions and things like that. It's a single page app that is running on top of Twill. So we manage the skills themselves in Twill. Users are able to log in through their Google RS17 account. It's fully custom to our internal needs, but still running on Twill. And it's powered by API, so if we need that list of skills to be in another application, that's possible, and Twill just become a service part of many more services internally. So that was for kind of the demo. Now I need to drink some water, and then I'll get into live coding.
Jesse, do you want to do a dance break?
Yeah, sure. I was going to rap, actually. Next time.
All right. So what are we going to build? We have this hashtag on Instagram and Twitter that we use to kind of tag projects that have been built with Twill or made with Twill. And we invite people to kind of tag their tweets or Instagram posts when they do a site with Twill. But we don't have a place to kind of a portfolio of those. We have, we have a logo grid on the Twill website. We have our case study at RS17, but we're trying to also have the community submit their own projects. And so for this live coding session, we had the idea of building this site live. So obviously, this is a CMS exercise, not a front-end exercise. So the front-end is something that has been built before, and it is here. So very simple website with a grid of sites. They have a title, a description, a link, and each of them has a detail page with a cover image, and below that, a bunch of flexible content so that we can kind of tell the story of that project that's been built on Twill. So let's do it. So I'm going to start completely from scratch. I'm in my code folder here, and we have a tool called Create Twill App. So if you're familiar with React, there's a Create React App tool that is kind of making the bridge of installing and setting things up a little bit shorter. And so by using that, it's going to install an empty Laravel app and kind of, you saw earlier, it was listed like to run Twill install. Those kind of things are already going to be run for me. But we'll start from there. So create Twill app. Oops. This is also my first live coding, so bear with me. So we'll call it made with Twill. So this is installing a Laravel app, pretty much what you would see when you create your own Laravel app, nothing crazy here. Downloading a bunch of dependencies, downloading Twill itself. Create Twill app is there to kind of download everything for you without you having to do it. So we have to wait a little bit. And the first thing that Create Twill app is going to ask me is my database. Obviously, you in a CMS, you have to save the content somewhere. So we're going to use a database. So I created that database before the Meetup. It's empty now. It's called Meetup-made with Twill. So there's no table, nothing in there. This is a MySQL database, so I'm just going to say 0 here. My database host is just localhost. For those that are not familiar, this IP is the IP of your computer when you're local. My database username is root. I'm using Laravel Valet, which is kind of, if you're familiar with MEMP or WEMP, it's kind of a developer setup for Mac to build Laravel apps. And by default, it's just root. I'm just going to use that, empty password, and the name of my database is going to be, let me check again, Meetup-made with Twill. Oops. So that's setting up the database, creating the tables. So it's creating tables that Twill needs, like features, files, media, related settings, tags, the users, and more recent migration that were needed by updates in Twill recently. So it's asking me to create a super admin account. Obviously, you need to kind of create a first account that will be able to do everything in the CMS. So I'm going to just provide my email. And that's it. My app is created. It's telling me I can go into that directory. And if I want to, I can use PHP Artisan Serve, which is a basic PHP server that is provided by Laravel. But first, I'm going to kind of show you what did this create. So I'm going to go into a code, and you can see here on the right, I have the front end running. It's fully static HTML. There's nothing integrated with anything. You can see the HTML here. It's a very simple page. There's nothing in there really. It's built with Tailwind. It's using Inter UI as the font because this is the font we use for Twill. But that's it. It's really just header with our logo, an H1 and H2, a project list, just a bunch of links with an image, H2, and links. That's it for the home page, and then the detail page for each of them. Same thing. It's going to have header, cover, the content itself, and a footer. And in the content, we can have just text, images, full width images, and embed. So like a YouTube video here. So the HTML is really, really simple. You have project info here, which is just a bunch of lists, a paragraph, which is just a div and a p, an image, another paragraph, an image full width, another paragraph. Nothing really complex. It's a very simple front end that I've been delivered, and the task today is to kind of integrate this into a Laravel app. So right now it's not in a Laravel app at all. It's just pure static HTML. So now I have this in a folder called made with Twill static, and the folder that I created right now is made with Twill. So that was just created for me, and it's a Laravel app. If I go into, let's say, route web, you have the default route of any Laravel application. When you see, so I'm in there now. I'm gonna run the server now. So PHP artisan serve. So it's telling me it's running my application here. So I can open this. So we tweaked a little bit the welcome page of Laravel. Usually you would have a Laravel logo here. That's the only thing that on the front end that the app we build is giving you. But obviously you're more interested in the back end for now. So you can log into the CMS with the user we just created. And there you go. You have an empty CMS. I'm going to go full screen. Nothing in, and I'm going to zoom in. Yeah. Nothing in the dashboard. Nothing in the nav except the media library for now. You can manage users and access your own kind of preferences if you need to change your email, but that's pretty much it. Like when I was saying no assumptions, that's what it means. There's nothing in the CMS beyond a media library. So from there, I need to create my first content type. So it's all about Twill projects. So I think I'm just going to call it projects. And so to create a content type, you can go back into your terminal. So I'm just going to open a new one here. And we have a command line interface for Twill where you can generate the code to create a content type. You can, of course, create those files yourself, but again, we have tools to get you started faster. It's all documented, so in our documentation, if you go into CLI generator, you see here, let's zoom in again. You have this command, PHP artisan Twill module. So it's a artisan command, which is Laravel is coming with all sorts of them, and so Twill is adding new ones for you. So you can create your own module, and depending on the feature you're going to use, you have to pass different kind of options. So today, we'll create a project module. So let me see, I'm just going to go into code, zoom in here, and cd made with Twill, PHP artisan Twill module projects. And the feature we're going to use today are media. I want to be able to attach images. I want to be able to have a slug, to have a detail page like a URL. I want to use blocks, and I want my content to have revisions. So I can pass those options. I'm using the shorthand version. You can also do things like that, as media, those kind of things. So I know them by hand, so just using the shorthand version. So when you run this, it's telling you a bunch of things about the files that it has generated. So it's a Laravel content type. So usually you have a database migration to be able to create database columns. You have a model, a controller, some views, pretty much basic Laravel stuff. But it's giving you also hints to how to get started and kind of integrate that into your code base. So the first thing you want to do is adding routes for that. You need a URL to be able to go and edit those projects. So I go back into the code. There is in Laravel, you have this web and API and channels and console routes. Twill is creating an admin one for you where you can register your Twill routes there. So I'm just going to add this here. That's going to tell Twill, okay, I have a module to be able to create projects. Then I can go back here and it's telling me something else. Set up a new CMS menu item in config Twill navigation. So I could right now go into admin.whatever/project and it would go to that page to edit project, but obviously I want that to be available in my navigation. And since I have full control over it, there is a file to be able to manage it. So I want it to be there at the first level. So I'm just going to go into that file, config, Twill navigation. Right now it's empty. My navigation is totally empty, and that's not what I wanted to paste. Just going to copy and paste this. So now I'm saying that at the first kind of level of the navigation, I have something called project, and it's a module. So now if I refresh this, there we go. We have project showing here. The navigation file is very simple. It's nested. So if you have multiple levels, you would kind of create another, I think here it's like primary navigation, something like that, and you create them as a tree, and that's creating your navigation automatically. So now I have my project kind of item. If I go in there, I'm going to have an error. It's going to tell me the table doesn't exist in the database. So pretty common Laravel error. I'm showing you an error just so that you realize that it's a Laravel app, and so the error you're going to see are going to be the same you would if you were to create this yourself. So what does that mean? I need to have that database table created, which is something that was actually said here by kind of the text that is outputted by our command. So I need to migrate my database. So like in any other Laravel application, you need to run php artisan migrate. So you see it has created the project tables. So now if I go back here and refresh, I can now see a listing of projects. And I can even create one. That might be where my demo starts to fail. So let's say Arts Institute of Chicago. And you start seeing here that because of some of the features I selected when I generated that module, the UI is kind of reflecting that. So I decided that I was going to have a slug to be able to have a detail page. And you see here that the permalink is kind of automatically refreshed when I'm changing my title. And that's where my demo starts to fail. My submission didn't work out. So let me see, what did I miss? Sorry. Nope. There's a project. So the files that get generated, they have a lot of comments to kind of help you get started. I'm going to remove that today just to remove kind of the clutter of the file. And because I want to understand what is happening, I'm just going to actually debug like I would if I was not in a live session. I'm sorry about that. But we have to figure these things out. So project 1, great. Okay. So it's telling me that I didn't specify which field I want to use as the slug, which is something that was actually commented for me here that I just need to uncomment. Because I've used the slug feature, and it tells me here, I just didn't remember myself, but it's telling me uncomment and modify this as needed if you use the as-slug trait. What it's saying is that the slug is generated from the title. So because I didn't have that, it was struggling to save. Now if I create again, there we go. So now I'm on the form page of this project that I created. Not much happening. By default, I have a description field. I could add some content here. Project 1 description, and save this, and it's still there. And it's already saving revisions. I can see I have multiple revisions of my content. I can decide to publish that, and there you go. We have our first project published. So obviously, we need a little bit more than just title and description. We'll need a URL for now. So we'll create a URL form field. So our documentation is listing kind of all the form fields that you can use. There's a form field section here. So it starts with basic inputs to WYSIWYGs, where you can control kind of all the formatting tools that you're giving to the publisher, and then media attachment, date picker, select different UI for different types of selections, multiple selections, pretty much all the fields that you need to create content. And so I'm going to need a URL field here, so I can just use a basic text field. So in the files that were generated, there is a form.blade.php file for my project module. So if I go into views, admin, project, there's a form file. And right now, as you can see, it only has the description, which is what we can see in the UI. So now if I wanted to add another one, I can just say I want another input. This one is going to be called URL. The label is going to be URL. And I don't want a max length on this. So now if I refresh my page here, not this one, I now have another field. And you can play around with all the options that we have here. If I wanted to add a note, for example, I could say note, please provide the full URL, something like that. That's really relevant, but you get the idea. And this is then available here in the form. And we have all sorts of options to kind of limit the field and validate what users are able to do with it, but also those kind of more hints for the publisher. So now if I try to save this, obviously it's not gonna save. Like if I try to do it right now, it's gonna just be empty, the URL, because I didn't add a colon for this in the database. If I show you the database now that was empty earlier, I have a project table now that has those fields. Sorry, it's very small. I don't think I can zoom in on this. But basically, it only has title and description field and published to be able to know when it's been published or not. So I need to add the URL field, which is what you would do in any other Laravel app. So what I can do is go back into the database migration that was created by the command I ran earlier, and you can see that the title field has been created for you here, the description field as well. So now I'm just going to add a URL field. It's just going to be a text field. That's what I want to store, some text. And then in my project, Laravel kind of eloquent model, I'm going to add the fact that I allow users to actually save this URL field. So now that I changed my database, I need to migrate it again. So if in a collaborative space where you would work with other developers, you would need to create a new migration to create that field. Here I'm just going to roll back the database to the state it was before, and then so that it creates that URL field for me. So I'm going to artisan migrate rollback and run. So that's deleting the project database. I'm migrating again, and now my URL field should be in the database. There we go. We have a URL field now. And now if I go back to my form, what's happening? Nope. Oh, of course, I don't have this project anymore. I refreshed my database. So if I go back to project, create a new one, project 1, I can now add description and a URL. So GPS, pentagram.com. Let's actually make this relevant and call it pentagram. Here we go. So now it's saving this new field. So it's still kind of a little bit boring. It's just 2 fields right now. So let's add some more interesting things. I'm going to add a way to attach an image to that. So I'm still going to copy and paste this first. This is going to be a media field. The name is going to be cover. The label is going to be cover image. And I don't need a note for this. If I go back into my project model, there's something that is commented here called media param. And it's saying uncomment and modify this as needed if you use the as media trait. That's what I'm using right now. So I'm going to uncomment this. And by default, it's creating a configuration where your cover image can be cropped for desktop and mobile with different ratios. So now if I go back into my form, I now have a cover image field. I can attach an image. It's opening the media library for me. And I can go into uploading a file, inserting this image. And because of the configuration I uncommented, I have the ability to crop this to different ratios and things like that. And you can completely change this, you know, like in this case, we wanted like a 16 by 9 ratio for the default crop or the desktop crop, but on mobile we needed a square. Let's say you have a different configuration for your front end. Sorry about the kind of switching. You would go here, and let's say on mobile, it's not a square anymore. It's more of a 4 by 5. So I can change this. Go back into my form. Now if I attach the same image again and crop it on mobile, it's not a square anymore, it's a 4 by 5. And so you can create as many as you want. That's really helpful for different layouts when the same piece of content is being used in different parts of the site, but potentially with different variations of the ratio. And also for responsive, obviously, you want to be able to kind of give control over what is the most important part of an image to the publisher, so that when things get kind of shrinked or scaled on mobile, they have the ability to say what is the center of their interest in an image. And so now that we have this form, we need to make the website that I showed you at the beginning of the live code alive. Right now it's all static HTML. It's not anywhere in the CMS setup yet. So let's do that. So going back into my Made with Twill static project, where I showed you earlier, I have this index page, which is just a header, project list, and footer. So what I'm going to do is copy this and put this into my Laravel application. So usually you put your views in the Laravel application under resources views. And right now we have the welcome screen, which is kind of the default Twill black welcome screen that you saw earlier, which is just a get started link and a bunch of links to our community spaces. I'm just going to remove that and replace it with my my HTML. The only thing that I need to kind of move also into this project is the build of the CSS. In a real project, I would set up the project with CSS compilation and things like that. Here, I'm just, for simplicity of this live coding session, just copy and paste this CSS file. So I go into the build, I have my CSS file, I'm just going to copy this into my Laravel project. So public, creating a new folder, go build, and I'm going to paste this in. There we go. So now this static page should work in my Laravel app. If I go to the front end of my project that I'm working on, here we go. So this is now running in the Laravel application, but it still does nothing. It's just static content. Just to prove that, I could potentially replace the title of the page here by, let's say, I don't know, like a variable that is going to come from the backend. So let's say that my title is something that is coming from Laravel now. It's not HTML anymore. And so if I go into my web file, here you can see that the /URL is just returning that welcome screen. So now I'm having a dynamic title that is coming from the backend. So I'm just going to put this here. And for now, just so you see it's actually working, I'm going to say hello, Twill Meetup. And I just need to restart that server. Not here, for some reason. And so view welcome, just making sure. Title. I think I was working on the detail page. No? Sorry?
Change it to the top right of the page.
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Yeah, go to the,
Oh.
to the front.
Oh, this one. Right. Yep. Okay. Sorry. I'm just using the wrong place in the HTML, but it is working. So now we want to actually see the project that we created in Twill in there. So you can go many ways in kind of taking the data that has been created by Twill in your front end. Here, obviously, we don't have much time, so I'm going to go with the fastest approach that Laravel is offering us, which is literally just retrieving the list of projects. We're going to filter the ones that are not published so that we don't display draft content, but that's going to be very simple. So I go into my web route again, and this time I just don't want to do the title only. I'm going to want to actually add some projects to that page that are kind of dynamic and coming from the CMS. So Twill created a project data model for us that is sitting under app models project. So I could do simply project all here, and that is going to run a database query that is going to give me all projects that are in the system, and that's pretty much all you would need to do to integrate with your front end if that's the need you have. If you don't need to filter through depending on whether it's published or not, obviously you want to, and so that's as simple as doing something like this. Nope. There we go. So now if I go back into my front end, I should have a list of projects available to me. And so I'm going to go back here, and the HTML that is displaying each project is the same. You can see We have one here, and right now they are all the same. So I'm going to kind of convert those fake projects into something that is dynamic and coming from the actual content that is coming from the CMS. So the first step in doing that is obviously kind of creating a loop to be able to loop through my different projects. So I'm going to say for each project as project and for each. So right now I could do something very dirty to just see if it's working. I could do project title, and that should show on the page. What did I do? Sorry? I need what? Yep. Here? Yep. Good catch. Thank you. Builder all. It's good. Sorry about that. There we go. And now, where is it? It's not showing anywhere. Project. Which project? Project title. Let me see. But it's empty. So that's because I don't have any project that are published. If I go back into the CMS and publish my one and only project for now, and go back here, now I have items in my collection of projects. So that's just debug information in Laravel, but I'm going to actually integrate this now. If I were to do this now, you can see I have pentagrams that is starting to show here. So now I want to use the actual HTML that each of those projects is using. So inside my loop, I'm going to put this HTML, and I can now remove all the fake HTML that was here. And yep. And I'm simply going to replace the text here that was static, and now it's going to come from Twill. So this is going to be the project title. This is going to be the project description. This is going to be the project URL. And same thing here. So now if I refresh this, I now have pentagram, description, and the URL of the site. So if I come here, and I'm changing my description to pentagram website, I refresh my front end, this is now actually coming from the CMS. So the last part is the image. So right now it's a URL that is here, completely static. I'm going to replace this to, it's a long URL, to the URL that is going to be built by Twill. So my project has an image that we called cover earlier. Come on. Project. Oh, yep.
There's no image in the.
There's no image in this one? Okay. So I can now attach my image. Update. There we go. So now if I create another project in the CMS, I can create actually multiple at the same time. So if I were to say Arts Institute of Chicago, I'm going to publish it directly and create and add another Open Society Foundations, publish it, create and add another. There we go. They are showing here. Obviously, I didn't fill them in, so they don't have an image. But now, if I go here and add an image to this, the front end is there. It's all working. So I think I spent a little bit too much time on this, and I wanted to do the detail page too, but I think you get the idea. So that's it.
Thank you, Quentin. So hopefully that was a good quick tour of what it's like to build with Twill, and we'll be releasing some demos and tutorials online of that sort pretty soon. So at home you'll be able to do a lot of the same and follow along as you get started. So we're going to finish up by talking a little bit about what's next for us and what's next for our product roadmap. I'll take you through a few cool things that are around the corner, and then we'll close out with a Q&A. I'll welcome back Quentin and George up, and we'll take any questions that you guys have. So as we think about what's next, we're really driven by principles rather than features, right? Of course, there's all sorts of functionality that we want to add and cool things that we want to, paste onto the package, but as an open source product, kind of building for a few different audiences, whether it's engineers, designers, product managers, publishers, it's important we keep in mind some key principles that kind of guide our progress. So first is developer freedom, right? As an open source package for building CMSs, it's super important that we empower our community to build whatever it is that they like and whatever it is that their stakeholders or their product requires. The second is publisher command, right? We really pride ourselves on our end user experience, so ensuring that the ultimate product that developers are building for their organization, for their team, is as usable and as powerful as possible. And the third is design integrity, right? As an Area 17 built product, we really place design front and center, and we understand the challenges that exist in the modern kind of or current CMS landscape, as George was saying at the top. And so we're thinking a lot about how we can build tools into Twill that promote great design and stable design kind of on an ongoing basis. So obviously each of these principles does drive features and does drive the roadmap, so I'll take you through a few things that we're thinking about next. So under this kind of developer freedom umbrella, we're excited to be releasing Twill 2.0 pretty soon, right around the corner in the next couple weeks. And that'll be bringing us into parity with Laravel 6, the most recent version, so that we're up to speed with everything there. Continuing to improve our documentation, so you'll see some updates to the form field documentation, a lot of things that Quentin took you through today. So you can reference that at home. You saw Quentin's, or actually Jan Hao, who's in the back there, has been working on a Create Twill app installer. So when you're getting started, you can kind of just press a button and have all sorts of packages and dependencies kind of automatically installed. And we're simplifying the developer experience so that if you're creating groups of form fields and groups of browsers, you can kind of do it in one fell swoop rather than creating a new browser with a new line of code every time you need one. So that's just kind of the first tip of the iceberg, so to speak. We have a lot more coming in terms of documentation and onboarding. Obviously, this is super key to developer freedom, right? Developers need to understand how to use our tool. They need to feel comfortable knowing how to do everything that it can do. So we'll be continuing to build out the documentation, enhancing our support for the Spectrum community. I mentioned code demos and video tutorials being a focus as well, so that as people kind of run into dead ends and obstacles, they can sort of access a library of resources to help them continue working. And ultimately, we really want to accelerate contributions, right? As an open source product, we want to leverage kind of the full power of our network and our community and give developers everything they want and need to keep working. So you'll see in the next couple months, we'll release a public roadmap so the community has a sense of where we're going beyond just the things I'm sharing today. It can potentially even help build some of those things and test out novel approaches to the functionality that we're trying to create. Automated code testing to kind of ensure that what you're building is working without too much manual oversight. We're thinking about a built-in API to kind of continue to extend our headless approach, and also building out a network or library of extensions, or you might call them plugins, so that you can kind of add on functionality and features without making the core tool package too heavy-duty or too complicated. So that's the developer freedom kind kind of principle, as I said, and this is sort of just an overview of what's coming around the corner. There's lots more that we'll be thinking about in the coming months too. Publisher command is super important, right? A lot of the thinking behind Twill is around that end user experience, that ultimately you're getting a CMS that is as powerful, if not more so, than everything else that's out there. So a key focus for us as we work with some of the organizations Quentin mentioned, the Art Institute, the Aspen Festival, the Opera, is really enabling whatever sort of permission setup that an organization might need. The idea being with Twill, right, that this isn't just a content management system for a single website, but potentially a content management system for your entire organization. So you might be managing several apps, databases, websites, of course, through this system. And you might have dozens, if not, at some of the organizations we work with, hundreds of stakeholders that are responsible for updating content, submitting content, managing content, and so on. So we really want to build a system that can flex to whatever the needs are and can be completely customized and extended to whatever an organization might require. So first, you can see that here on the role level, right? You can create any sort of role you might need. We have all sorts of kind of built-in permission levels or sort of access capabilities that a role might have, and you can enable those at sort of the umbrella level across your CMS. We're also thinking about what that looks like on a page-specific context, right? There might be one-off pages, high-priority sort of sensitive information in your system. We see this with some of our organizations, and you kind of either want to restrict or include people that might otherwise have or not have access to that. Ultimately, the goal here, again, is to allow an organization to do whatever they need to do with their content and make sure that the right people are able to do the right things with it. The next level of that is kind of enabling workflow, right? Permissions are sort of just the foundation, and we really want to extend from there what organizations can do within the CMS. Obviously, a lot of collaboration is managed off-platform, whether that's in email and Google Docs, in terms of coordinating who's responsible for publishing what. A couple of the larger organizations we've worked with have talked a lot about this idea of kind of creating a workflow on platform, right? So they might have administrators that really just want to review content when it's ready to go live. They might have more junior contributors that are responsible for preparing content, but they don't really want to give the ability to publish and update live to the front end, since that's a sensitive area for their audience. So we're working on creating that into the forms that you saw earlier, where a certain permission level could submit content for review. So that's what you're seeing in the first screenshot to the left. Potentially flag a few people who are responsible for reviewing it. Maybe you have a designer, maybe you have a lawyer if there are legal considerations. And then each of those folks might have a notification, a queue that they can review from to make sure that the content is up to speed in whatever way it might be. And then finally it goes live to the website. Obviously this isn't something for everybody. Some people are going to be kind of independently managing their own blog or their own content, or it might just be a few people. But this is also where we feel like the kind of custom bespoke nature of Twill can shine for a more premium kind of user and really backbone a full organizational kind of content workflow, again, in platform rather than across a bunch of different tools and workspaces. And then ultimately, we want to make sure, again, under the spirit of publisher commands and kind of building custom for what the audience requires, that we can customize the UI however we need. That might mean localization or language-based. We have several websites where we've built both admin experiences that are in different languages, and then also localization interfaces where you can publish in as many as 20 or 30 or 40 different languages at a time. The Open Societies Foundation, for example, they obviously do business all over the world. Their content is available in every continent, so they need to make sure that each local audience is able to read it in their native language and understand it as such. Styling, we've already started to see some interesting kind of experiments, for better and worse, with the styling of Twill CMS that the community has created. So we want to make sure people are empowered to kind of rebrand if they want to do that for a particular audience, or if it's just to play around for their own kind of use and for their own audience. Reusability is going to be really exciting. I think we have an opportunity. We saw Quentin build a blog. Do we need to have our community rebuild a blog every time that somebody wants to create one? Similarly, we've built museum sites. Are there kind of commonalities between those? Agency sites, event sites. We want to kind of maybe build some packages and kind of starter kits, as we sometimes call them internally, so that as you're kind of spinning something up, you can make quick progress and not sort of reinvent the wheel each time. And I mentioned extensibility before also. We want to make sure, as Quentin said, that there aren't a lot of assumptions built in to the initial kind of package, but we also want to empower, again, not starting from scratch. So how can we create a network of extensible features and functions that you can kind of just add right on without affecting the quality or kind of weight of the code. So last up, and certainly not least, is design integrity. As I mentioned, this is super critical to sort of the values and the value that Twill can bring, we feel. We've seen this often with our clients, right, where a design system is often only as good as the people using it or the tools that they're given to implement it. Time and time again, we've seen when our clients don't have clear documentation or when they don't have guardrails, these design systems that we've spent months in collaborating on and building out sort of fall apart to some degree under the kind of implementation of your day-to-day content and editorial teams. And obviously there are gradations to that. Sometimes spacing can get wonky if you don't use something in the right place. Sometimes you can break a narrative experience completely or do something that the design system wasn't really intended to do. So our solution for this is pretty simple, but we also think pretty exciting, and points at maybe a principle I didn't mention of sort of interdisciplinary collaboration that we're really trying to build into the tool, where we want to give designers the tools to build design rules, the rules that make up their system into the admin console. So that might mean something like if you have a block editor with 15 blocks in it, right? A quote block, an image block, 5 different variations of a video block, and so on. You might not want to use 2 quote blocks together because the spacing doesn't really work for that, right? Or you might want to use always an H3, under an H2 or something like that. So obviously it could be anything we want, and we don't want to make assumptions on what designers want their product to do, but ultimately allowing them to work with their engineers to create those rules so that ultimately the admins are empowered to follow them, right? If you get either a hint when you're building or perhaps an error message when you try to publish something that doesn't quite adhere to those rules, we found that it's much more likely that admins will sort of follow the leader when it comes to design. We've done this in sort of a bespoke way on some of our clients where we sort of manually build out a few of these rules, but we want to kind of build a system where something like that can be done fairly quickly and fairly, in sort of an automated way so that it's easier to create. That's sort of it. Obviously, there's a lot more coming for the roadmap and a lot of exciting stuff that we're hoping to release in the coming months. But for now, I'll welcome back up George and Quentin, and we'll take any questions that you guys have on the roadmap, on the code demo, on the landscape, anything else that we've talked about this evening. Who wants to go first?
So it looks like you're mostly using it not headless, you're building it out through the app itself.
In this demo, yes, but building an API on top of what I built would be a one-liner too, because Laravel, you can return JSON out of the models, and so you can perfectly, the front end could have been a view app that needed an API and could have built the same thing at the same time.
Yeah, that tech index that he shared is headless, and it was built in a short weekend.
The Institute of Chicago also have the entire content that is exposed as a REST API that they use to power mobile apps.
Yeah, the one thing that we want to think about Twill is we don't want to think about it as a content management system for a website.
Mm-hmm.
We want to be able to abstract the presentation layer from the content. We want to think cross-channel. We want to think that this is your publishing platform. And that's why we're moving into like workflows and, in a sense, trying to replace Google Docs, like commenting and things like that. These are things a little bit further into the future. But we're seeing that our clients are, doing workflow in one place, doing content creation in another place, and then entering content into their CMS, just for their website, and so many different management, so much management of content where we can bring that all together into one place. And so the content it's both your archive, like area17.com is our archive of every single project we've ever worked on since 2003. And including what technologies we've used, what solutions per project, who was the team on it, etc. You guys don't see that, but it's our tool, and that's where, that's how it should be across the board. So, so that's, off topic of your question.
No, that's cool. That's very good. Can you create forms? Can you use the forms that you create in the backend as front-end forms? So something to collect information from users of the site. So maybe it's like a marketplace selling musical instruments. Can you?
So you wouldn't reuse the UI, obviously. You would want to have the front-end UI customize the brand of the front-end. But yes, we actually have sites like that where there is a user-generated content aspect where what is submitted by users is listed in the CMS, and we already have, when Jesse was saying we have these bespoke or ad hoc features that are not yet available in Twill, but that we use internally. This was kind of like this, where they were able to approve what was coming from the front end and then add onto it if needed, and then publish it.
Because in the past, our team has hacked together WordPress sites that kind of work as like initial websites for startups where users are submitting content, and it's a
Using the
real,
subscriber role, you mean? Like
yeah, so it's thanks.
Yeah, you have full control, so it's really about like how you would do a form in a Laravel app, is how you would do it in a Twill app, and then Twill is giving you kind of helpers to, if you want to create content in Twill programmatically, but just in the UI, you have that too.
That's the thing, is Twill is not a packaged solution. Like as you've seen, and maybe non-coders, don't recognize this, but and I know Quentin repeated it over, but he's coding just like you would a custom app in Laravel. Except the only difference is like all of a sudden he has a media library. All of a sudden he has a block editor, which he didn't show, but so you're getting all of these things that version control, all these things that would take like months to develop. If you had to develop each time, it's just available. Because the concept behind Twill is let's not focus on the boring shit so that we can actually focus on what's important. And let's get that out of the way, and let's not rebuild features. And that's what we're trying to do, and that's that's the core that's trying to happen there.
And let's make sure that boring stuff is really good too. I mean, ultimately, we pride ourselves on user experience design, and we've applied those same principles to the CMS experience. So not only are you getting that version control, but you're getting that version control, which we spent a lot of time figuring out how to make as clean and simple as possible, similarly as we would if we were building a client's front-end website.
Exactly, and it's challenging for us too, because what's interesting is from a dev perspective, Twill is moving forward big time. Fernando over there just shared on Slack what Twill looked like, because we're replatforming area17.com, what it looked like, a few years ago, and what it looks like today. It's like night and day. It's just like, all the code, it's just very little code. However, that conversation is not happening at the UX level, or the UI level, with designers, strategists, publishers, and stuff like that. And that's where we need to start co-designing at that level, because even though we've done our best, as we think, we can push it forward. We want the principles of open source and that kind of community to be able to push forward the user experience also. And that's why we want to create venues for designers and publishers so that we can co-design on that level, not just at the code level.
I was gonna say, good transition, speaking of the boring shit. How do you guys deal with like migrating old content or previous content that is from the old stack?
It's a really good question. We have all sorts of ways of doing that on our client projects now, from using kind of third-party tools to manually writing scripts from old systems and things like that. You guys saw the workflow thing we were teasing before. We kind of imagine that in a lot of ways that can replace our content migration process. If we allow people to get into the CMS early with a certain level of permissions, right, they can start loading up content, and then later folks can come in and review that before the site goes live. Rather than kind of splitting across environments and splitting across teams, it can sort of all be done in one place. But right now it is a bit bespoke, quote unquote, to the project.
You meant migrating from an old website, or?
Yeah, we did that with Twill, and because we have helpers to kind of create content programmatically in the same way that it's very easy to set up the UI. It's very easy. In the end, you have a Laravel model. Adding content to a Laravel model is fairly straightforward. It's a database that is structured the way you decided, and so as long as you are able to map what was in the system before to what you want to do now, migration is fairly straightforward. And it's also true, we've never heard of anyone replatforming from Twill, but it would be really easy because the data is not, if you look at the database of a WordPress or a Drupal, more or less so for Drupal than WordPress, but it's a WordPress database. It has WP post and post content, and it's very specific to WordPress. In Twill, it's your database, you create it yourself, so migrating is very straightforward because you don't have to learn the syntax or the structures of Twill. You simply map one field in the previous system to the new field in the new system.
Yeah, Quentin mentioned earlier this principle when we're creating Twill CMSs where the organization of the content in the CMS matches the front end, and that results in a content structure that's really straightforward and completely abstracted from any model in terms of how Twill does things, right? You have your entity, which might be case studies, you have all the fields that make up that content, and so it becomes really easy either if you're going away from Twill, which as Quentin said, we haven't done much of yet, or going into Twill, it's super simple to figure out, what fields you're mapping to or from as a result.
Yeah, I know someone who works here, he builds products every week. He puts new products out, Mubs. I'm not sure you can follow it. And if you're online, Mubs, hello. But he went in and he would build all of his products without a CMS. But then retroactively, he was able to take Twill and just add it to an existing database, as and just map the field. So you don't have to start with Twill. It's probably going to be easier, but you don't have to.
I'm a graphic designer. I use Webflow for website projects. I see all the similarities. It's very similar now. I think it's going to be more of a open source, more flexible solution. Because I know sometimes when this Webflow, some plugins.
Are you familiar with Webflow?
Yeah, Webflow is kind of the abstracted version of that, where you build the UI of the CMS using the UI itself. Yeah. That's a goal that we have further down the line, but definitely we want to try to kind of abstract everything more and more so that we can eat our own dog food. The block editor could be used to build forms. And, with time we'll kind of remove a lot of layers of code so that everything becomes kind of abstracted, but at the same time we want to keep developer control. That's where we make it very easy so that if you have very simple needs, you're going to spend very little time. Maybe the same time you would spend in the UI moving things around, because the code is actually might be quicker for a developer than moving things around in the UI.
Yeah, George mentioned before this idea we want developers to spend all their time on not the boring shit, right? The new, fun, custom stuff. And so anything we can do to kind of, as Quentin was saying, either abstract away that code or sort of automate those early stages of setting up, the baseline of what you're probably going to have, is definitely kind of on our radar, and we're looking at as next steps.
It's a product that's really coming out of Area 17 because we work with such a diverse client set with
Right.
so many different needs. And Webflow is, I've never used it, but I watched a video on YouTube and it seems compelling. It seems awesome, but ultimately, if you saw the whole kind of architecture of the Art Institute of Chicago, it's just not something that you can use something like WordPress or Webflow or something like that. I'm assuming. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, and so we need to build infrastructure for companies like the Art Institute of Chicago, or the Opera, or Open Society Foundation, and our development team needs full control to be able to be a part of an ecosystem, and so I think that's the real key. And that's what we're focusing right now, because that's what we do as an agency, and there's many agencies and developers out there that do that. However, we're excited. We're designers, we're excited about stuff like that too. But it's later in the roadmap to be able to create kind of like consumer-based products. Right now, it's truly like a developer tool, and yeah. So if that makes sense. Yeah.
Could you tell me what your roadmap is for the media library? Well, right now it's pretty basic, right?
Yeah.
Like upload images and choose things, whatever. You can imagine like a whole host of other features, like just tagging things, but we want to organize a ton of media, so it's like hard to organize everything in the media library itself. I'm just thinking about some other designer-specific ways that you might organize images. And right now, images and files are piled in together. Just like separated tabs.
Yep.
That's a different experience around uploading those and managing those. That's something that you thought about.
I think folders are definitely something that is part of the roadmap. It's been a question that the community has been coming up with, and it's technically not very complex. I mean, it's already using folders. It's just not visual. Tags. You could argue that tags are folders, but so if you tag things and then you display a folder for those tags visually, you have a more organized media library. But I'm really interested to hear more about maybe what you said at the end about the field itself, because it's an interesting aspect of Twill. Like image management is where we want to excel. We have all sorts of tools, but I'm really eager to learn more about it.
Yeah, I'm talking too much, I'm sorry. But just to add on to that, it's similar to the idea of it's your repository for content. It needs to move in a direction where it's your repository for media. And so there should be no difference between the media. I mean, I'm dreaming here, but there should be no difference between the media library in your content management system and what you use to power other things. And so we need to be able to be moving into that direction where it's folders, it's tags, it's, we have tags, but, advancing, further so that, the metadata is getting flushed out, that, that was part of the reason that we went with high resolution, really pushing that the media library is high resolution so that we have one master photo, because I hate WordPress and having 17 different versions of the same photo in my media library, but just the cleanliness of having one and then, doing, on-the-fly cropping. And so we need to push forward in that, and that's why I think all three of us are really interested in
what sort of ideas you have. I will add, we're kind of experimenting a little bit with what a media library can even be. Quentin referenced the Aspen Ideas project that we did this summer, and we sort of broke out certain content types into a media library format where they have these sessions that produce tons of what you might call micro content. Cool quotes, cool clips, cool images from particular events, but then they reuse those things the same way you might an image on all sorts of different blogs, sort of narrative editorial pages, event pages that sort of recap the event. And so we built a media library-like experience for them that allows them to reuse those sorts of bits of content, which aren't all technically media, in all sorts of places across the site. So I think there's a lot more to dig into there, but excited about playing around with what's possible.
Do you guys think toolkit ever does data visualizations or dynamics and things like that, or maybe you can sort of back in index later?
Definitely.
So we're doing that now.
Yeah.
So we just launched a new brand for the International Energy Agency, and we're working on their new platform. And they're all they're like the data master for all energy. And so we created a whole library of data visualization on the front end, and all the data points are coming in through Twill from there. Like they have, I'm not going to explain it as well as but
Yeah.
we're bringing things in from different databases that they have internally, and into the CMS, and then they can manipulate that content within the CMS and decide what information is showing, and choosing different charts and so on and so forth to be able to display that data. And so first step with our launch is going to be December or January. It's going to be about displaying of data, but then the next step is going to be about data subscriptions, downloading data, saving data, slicing and dicing it. And they're one of the clients who also wants to shift because they're doing everything in Microsoft Word, and they want to shift to 100% Twill. But it's going to require some things like live editing between two people, commenting, etc. So some certain features, the workflow, and things like that. So it's pretty exciting. And so yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, totally. That's actually kind of interesting that copies of commons that you implemented. Is that something that is in tools now, or is that something that comes in after?
It's a conversation that we're having, but it's not on the roadmap right now.
What, the data viz?
No, commenting and live, two-way, The next step that we're working on is improving our collision control, and the ability to have what I call version 0, which is basically having a published item, but being able to edit it and share it internally. But it's not published. But it's the new version, not published. The existing. You can actually do that, with a live version, except the moment that you hit publish to share with somebody else or save, it's going to publish it to the website. So we're going to introduce, sooner than later, we're going to be looking at version 0 and within the version, the revisions, and also better collision control. Once we get that in place, we can start thinking about more allowing like pair editing and stuff like that with Google Doc.
In the demo, you serve one HTML using PHP, but I found much involved in like the React app or some other kind of SVA. Like, how does that integration work with the RPO backend?
You can build your own API basically. So in the file, maybe I can show you actually. Because I had this, I ran over, and so I stopped the live coding, but I had more. And actually, everything I had was in this single file. That's all the code to build the entire site. Because we did only the home page, basically. But all the code that I would have needed to copy and paste into my code base is sitting into this file. I'm creating blocks here. I'm doing all sorts of things to do the detail page. It's all fitting into 192 lines. So we're going to complete that project in the next few days and get it live. And that's basically, most of the code is there. And so if I wanted to, I just built, earlier I did something like this where I just have a view, like a PHP view, where I'm returning the project. But if you wanted to do something with an API, you could take this and Now if I go back into my website, or actually I can go into my API file, which is what Laravel is shipping by default now. So that's going to create a /API/project route where I'm returning every published project. So now if I go back to this and do /API/projects, there you have it. You have your 3 projects as an API. You can integrate this into a React app.
See?
Whenever you share back. Any other questions?
It sounded like that workflow thing is coming pretty quickly. It's imminent.
We're working on it potentially for a client.
Potentially for 2.
Potentially for 2.
Yeah.
So, but we can't put it on the roadmap right now. Yeah.
I just meant the part with different users being able to approve a piece of content.
Yeah. No, that's
Not the
exactly.
Word
Yeah.
doc in
So
document and all that
it's not something we can promise right away, but it's something that we're working on. But
We have the UI already.
Yeah.
we have the UI
stuff.
already.
That's why I asked.
Exactly. We got plenty of. Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
When you use Twill for clients, are you using the version that's included in open source? Or
Yes.
are you using
Yes.
the repo that are specialized in that?
No, we use the public version. Potentially during the course of the project, we have our own version while we develop things that are, custom to the project, or it's just a pending branch before being public. The composer file of our client is linking to the public GitHub version.
I'm just curious because you have I feel like you, by open sourcing, are taking on many more masters than you already have with all the different clients you have. And now you have the other clients who are paying you, you have people using it that aren't paying you, and so you're going to have more stakeholders to deal with, and how are you thinking about managing all that? That can get. It has 13,000 downloads and that 1.3 million downloads.
Right.
More significant.
We're fine with 13. No. No. I mean that's part of it. I mean the last release of Twill had 22 contributors, and we're implementing our tests. We're starting to work on some automated testing to be able to, because right now we're basically doing all of the reviewing, of code, which is a lot of work. But once we get the automated tests in place, and being able to automate that process, and putting these things in place, it simplifies the process. And also we're starting to see the community respond to each other, and that's really helpful. And that's ultimately what it is. So this is a two-way relationship. We're not trying to be generous. We're actually, this is a contract negotiation. We're giving you 10 years of free work, and if you like it, you're going to contribute back. And we're already seeing that. Our Institute of Chicago has already contributed to Twill 1.2, like their dev team, is contributing back to the project, so that's exciting to see. And so, we're trying to create an ecosystem where we can push this further, because I started this night out. I know we got really tactical with a lot of these things, but we're really serious about not just making a form-based. It's still form-based, but so it's still there. But how do we push forward? How do we make it where what's the future of creating, curating, and publishing content? And how do we create design systems as a service so that we're not creating these static pages, but rather a design system that we can just, similar to how Twill is working right now, where you just write a couple of lines of code and then you have the UI. How do we create that service, and push that further, so we're not constantly having the same frustrations as designers or developers or publishers. And so anyway, we want to do that through public collaboration, so we're really excited about that future. And it's going to be enabled through automation and organization and building a team, just like any other popular open source project. Yeah. More questions? Comments, concerns?
Virginia.
Right? Virginia.
Hi, I'm not Virginia, and I don't work here.
Okay. We'll
My
pretend.
question is, if I'm a developer, how can I get started with Twill? How can I use it in my own projects? How can I incorporate it into my business or use case?
Great question.
Sure. So it's all public, like any other Laravel package. So if you're familiar with Laravel, you would know how to use Twill. You would know from the documentation how to install it, things like that. If not, there are resources obviously to learn Laravel first. But we've seen front-end developers, strictly front-end developers, before trying to use Twill, or maybe they have WordPress experience or things like that. But they managed to, with time, they managed to learn Laravel because Twill was helping them kind of kickstart things, and then they would face Laravel errors, and then they would go into Laravel documentation. So but again, most of our roadmap that we share today is about improving that. We have blockers right now for some types of developers that are just stuck. If you never worked with Laravel before, it can be daunting to try Twill, but we are really working on that through Create Twill apps, through documentation, through videos. This was my first live coding session, and I loved it. So we're gonna do videos now.
You did a great job.
Thank you.
No, I mean, that's the biggest challenge. We focused on the core app, we focused on the experience, we focused on the code, we focused on all these things, we put it out live. And then we realized that there was a big gap, between not knowing Twill and knowing Twill over there. And there's people who, were good jumpers, who were able to get a good running start and jump across and get over there. And anybody who gets over there never goes back. Like, everybody loves it, and we hear great feedback, etc. Then there's the people who are just have tenacity, where they would jump and they wouldn't make it, but they claw their way up the mountainside, and then they get over there and they're like, oh, and they're like, okay, Twill, I love you, man, but fuck you, why did you put me through this, man? And then but that's that's about 20% of the developers. The other 80% are just either going to the cliff and be like, no, or just jump. Some people are jumping and, and so we realized that we needed to create a bridge, our onboarding, and that's something that we didn't think about. You see how simple it is. When you're, it's just it's really easy, but you don't even know those options are out there without good, tutorials, code demos. We don't even have a code demo that's public, so, we only have a visual demo, but we don't have something you can download and pick apart and see how something's been done. So doing things like that, that's our, really hot priority right now, because we feel that once you get to that side, it's a no-brainer. Because if you're going custom, if you're going PHP, you're probably going Laravel, then you just get all this work for free. So it's not like making a decision of what platform you're choosing. You're making a decision on custom, you're making a decision on PHP and Laravel, and then this is kind of just and so but we just need to get help, get people there.
Any other questions? All right, thanks everybody so much for coming. We still got lots of food and drink if anybody wants to grab something on the way out, but appreciate the time, and if you have any questions come up, we'd love to say hello.